We'd made several trips to the emergency room to get checked out. And at that time, you don't expect a 7-year-old boy to be really sick. So it was, I think he's faking pain for attention. So they eventually found a benign abdomen, so a rigid abdomen, and thought it was a bowel intercept. So they did one surgery to remove that. And then a few months later, I had a second one. And that's when, they went in to fix the second one. They found tumor just filling up my entire abdomen.
We love the San Gabriel Valley. There are some amazing people and businesses here, and we think they deserve the spotlight. Welcome to the SGV Master Key Podcast. We'll have on the people that make the SGV great. We'll find out what makes them tick, their ups and downs, their history, and we're going to have fun doing it. This is the SGV Master Key Podcast. And now your hosts, Scott Warmoth and Russell Mano.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy an in-depth look at the people behind the businesses in our community and just the people that make up our great community, this is the show for you. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning guest, I hope you enjoy this episode. And like always, just so you know, when I'm looking for stuff that's going on in this community, SGV Now is a great resource for that. We've partnered with them. They're your source for city news, announcements, events, special savings, and everything SGV. Go check them out on Instagram at sgv.now or read their magazine, SGV Now, on their website, sgvnow.com. Well, Scott, we've had a bunch of really interesting guests, and most recently we had on Barney Santos of Boulevard Market in Montebello, and we were talking about how this one event, this one thing could spur this growth in community that, all these, that sort of lifts the community at large, right?
Yeah, it's, it instigates other growth and development, and really, you need that anchor. And from there, you start to see, crowds come, people come, the other businesses thrive, new businesses can grow from there. And that's maybe not the story of today's guest. He may have already been there. I don't know. But certainly he, also has been part of this regrowth of Montebello that's really great to see.
Sure. And I'm anticipating this area where the Boulevard Market is, or just, I guess, it's central Montebello, that there's this rebirth, sort of like how Old Pasadena had, downtown Alhambra had, in certain areas. Like there's just one thing happens. I think for Alhambra it was maybe the movie theater, that corner there, right? Revitalized that whole area.
Yeah. I'm not sure because I have rarely been to Main Street, Alhambra. We need to get some guests.
Yeah.
Right? I just know that as I drive past it, it's just amazing what's happened there. And I remember the old movie theaters, and that's why.
Oh, yes.
That's how far back I go. So
I only see those in black and white pictures. No.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's get into our guest today. He's the president and brewmaster at, is that correct? Nate?
Yeah, the lead brewer.
Lead brewer. President and lead brewer at Angry Horse Brewing, and his name is Nathan McCusker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was a mouthful for me to pronounce, but what does that involve? What do you do?
Yeah, so I run the day-to-day operations at Angry Horse, and then in partnership with my assistant brewer, we brew all the beer at Angry Horse and create all the recipes, and everything that we serve on site is actually brewed right there on site.
Awesome. And how does a person, like, aside from liking beer, how do you get into, creating your own beer?
Yeah, so I started out as a home brewer years ago, back in, I think it was 2006 is when I started out home brewing, and was homebrewing for years and joined a homebrewing club. And once we eventually decided to go pro in 2012, we started getting engaged in the professional brewing scene and joined the Brewers Association, and shortly after that, the Master Brewers Association of America, and just started learning what it took to transition from being a home brewer to a professional brewer. With that, started attending the Craft Brewers Conference and making friends in the industry, and started brewing on as many professional systems as we could to learn the ropes. But since then, we've gone through the Brewing and Malting Science course through MBAA, and have taken a couple courses through UC Davis as well.
Okay. Well, as someone who used to drink and really enjoy beer, I did look into homebrewing, right? Because I thought I would enjoy it, and what I learned from just looking at what it would take was a high level of sanitation and a lot of disappointment at first for something that you could just go out and buy, right? So, how did you know you wanted to stick through that? Because I imagine, or was it difficult in the beginning when you're brewing it at home?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the first batch of beer I brewed, I found online. Being a bit of a geek, I find everything online. And it was supposed to be George Washington's beer. And I thought, this is the coolest thing. I'm going to brew our founding father's beer. And at that point, I didn't even know it was legal. So I went to a library and actually Googled how to make beer. And that's when I found out there were clubs and stores and everything. And it's actually legal to brew beer. And made the worst batch of beer you've probably had as my first batch of beer. But while I was trying to figure out what I did wrong by reading books and blogs and forums, that's really where I got the bug. It was trying to figure out what I did wrong. I started learning the right way of doing things, and we started brewing almost every weekend. We were brewing a 5-gallon batch of beer, creating different recipes, learning from other people's recipes, and a lot of disappointment early on. And one of the things I don't think people realize is being a brewer is like being a glorified janitor. The main thing we do is clean and sanitize everything. It's a constant thing that we do several times a day. So, but yeah, it's sometimes those bad batches are what lead to some of the best beer in the future, because figuring out the mistakes that you made help you to become a better brewer in the long run.
You mentioned so you had a group of friends doing this together with you?
Yeah, I've brewed with a couple friends over the years and being part of a homebrew club, and then my brother, who's my business partner, and I would brew quite a bit together, and my partner Maylene and I would brew together as well. Yep.
I imagine, is it an expensive hobby to take on?
It can be. It's funny. It's similarly priced to buying a craft beer is to make your own beer. So you do it for the love of the craft more than you do it for saving money, especially these days with the cost of barley right at the moment. So yeah, it's not an inexpensive hobby, especially once you get into doing all grain brewing and buying the stainless steel pots. And that seems to be a common trend with brewing or home brewing is the equipment side of things. There's always something new and fancy and cool you can get to upgrade your system.
Do you do home brewing as well as your business, or are they the same?
We don't do home brewing as much anymore. It's actually something I'd really like to get back into, but we brew so much professionally and so many unique brands and beers that at least a couple times a month we have kind of an experimental batch that we release just in the tap room. Instead of doing it on the homebrew scale, we just do it in a 5-barrel batch. That's
one of the benefits. Your own creations.
Yeah,
with your own flavor or taste.
Yep.
And so, I'm sorry, I'm not a drinker, and I'm not sure how it works, but are your tastes and flavors really unique to your business?
Yes and no. We do have a couple niches that we do. Like we have a whole milkshake series, milkshake IPA, which is a style of hazy IPA with lactose added. So we have a series of those that are relatively unique. When we first started doing them, they were very unique. But more and more people are doing milkshakes, and that's starting to hit the market a little bit.
Wait. Okay, so I haven't had a drink in maybe 6 years. So what is that?
Yeah, so
it's like a creamy beer?
It has kind of a creamy texture to it. I won't say creamy like, I wouldn't think of it as being like milky creamy, but because it is a hazy IPA, it gives it kind of like that fluffy mouthfeel, if you will. And then the residual sweetness from the lactose that's added give it a little bit more of a mouthfeel and a little bit of kind of a sweetness. Not like super sweet, you're not drinking a soda, but a little bit more sweet than drinking, a traditional lager or something that's attenuated.
Okay. So I lived in Germany for 2 years. This is, when I was 17 and 18, but I could drink there. And that's where I learned to like and appreciate beer and learn how terrible American beer is. I wouldn't even call it beer, just from having had that experience. But over there, they have these purity laws, right, where you can only have 5 ingredients. And they get all these varieties of beer from, I think it's like the roast level or the variations of ingredients, but they can only by law have 5 ingredients over there. Did you know about that?
I did, yeah. The oh my goodness, I'm not going to remember the actual name of it. But yeah, the German purity laws. It's interesting to hear the different dynamics of like people's thoughts of the history of that, and how there are some people that really love that idea because it keeps beer very pure. And then there's another school of thought that this was a way for the powers that be to essentially make it an exclusive thing to become a brewer, because it excluded a lot of the people that would be doing like gruits and stuff where they find different styles or different things to ferment and add to the beer. So it did lead to have, some of the best beer in the world coming out of Germany, but it also prevented some of the innovation that was happening prior to those laws going into effect. So it's interesting to hear the different dynamics and some of the breweries locally that are doing kind of wild styles like gruits, and kind of their philosophy around almost adamantly being against the purity laws.
Sure. And to that, they only allow 5 brewers at Oktoberfest in Germany. And like, they're like, really the mainstream old German brew houses.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I think it's like Spaten, Wienstephaner, I forget the other ones, but they only allow 5 in the whole festival, which is like enormous, just enormous.
Yeah. That's wild. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Have you ever been to
I
Oktoberfest?
haven't yet. I want to really badly. My other business partner went a few years back, and it looked amazing. I've always wanted to go, but we've just never taken the trip yet.
Well, how long have you been in business in Montebello?
We opened our doors in 2017. So we signed our lease shortly before that, and took about 9 months to build out and get all of our licensing in place. And March of 2017, opened the doors, and it's been, all downhill from there, as they say.
Yeah, well, learning period, right?
Yeah. Well, learning period, and then just going through the past couple of years, LA County did a lockdown breweries for 47 weeks out of 52 weeks in a year. So it was an interesting experience, and trying to pivot and find other ways to just survive. It's
what did you do?
We did a lot of direct consumer. We did virtual beer tastings where people could order beer online, and then we'd once a month you'd join on Zoom, and we'd walk through each of the beers. And so we actually made some new customers across the state that we wouldn't have had otherwise, which is kind of cool. And this year, before the end of the year, we're actually going to be launching our new website so we can do direct consumer again through subscription programs and some other fun things. So some good things came out of it, just with kind of pivoting our business model a little bit.
Well, but it hurt you financially, I'm sure. It
was an interesting time. That's for sure. It's hopefully we never see something like that again as a society, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, now there's been some, at the time you opened 2017, how was the neighborhood? How was the community? Were they, pretty open to accepting you? And did you, develop a good customer base initially?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about Montebello. I think it's such a wonderful community and such a tight-knit community. It's when we first came in, we were actually in the process of opening in downtown Los Angeles and running into a few different challenges. And we aspired to be a benefit corporation, and the mayor at the time reached out to us through a relationship that he had with another family that was hoping to start a brewery in Montebello, and just called us and said, hey, I think that your brand would actually fit really nicely because of your values about wanting to build community. Come talk to us. So we planned a day and went out, and before meeting with the mayor at the time, we drove around their warehouse district to look for different locations, and sat down, and almost the first thing on my mouth is, I just don't think we're looking at going into your warehouse district. It's just not what we're going for. And no, I don't want you in our warehouse district. I want you downtown. We're really trying to bring back the boulevard, and that's why we really like you, is we think that your philosophy about building community fits really well into us trying to bring back the boulevard. Well,
what were you doing at that time? So you had a name of some sort then?
Yeah, we had a name, and at that point, my brother and I, we incorporated in 2014, and that's when we really started building out our strategy to open. And in 2016, we brought on a couple additional partners, and a couple backed out, but Nate is one of them, who's our current business partner, still joined our team, and it was through that connection that we met the mayor.
That would be the mayor of Montebello.
Correct, at the time, correct.
And so that was a nice plus, having the government already behind you.
Yeah, and I mean, we still had to go through all the process and the red tape and everything, and that's one of the good things that we actually saw, is that they weren't trying to cut corners and give favors or special relationships. They were really just trying to work through the process to get somebody into the boulevard to help bring it back. But we joined a a community that was already there and thriving, like Salvatore's, which has been there for a couple generations, and Alondra's across the street. But it was pretty bare at that point. Shortly after we opened, a clothing boutique opened up down the road, and since then, now Boulevard Market and a couple hair salons, and even an esthetician opened up just recently on the Boulevard. And through a partnership with the Cesar Chavez Foundation, they're going to be opening a big mixed-use development in the very near future. So it's cool to see that after now 5 years, the vision that the then mayor had is starting to come to fruition of the Boulevard really getting reactivated, becoming a walkable, shoppable community.
So you're on Whittier Boulevard, as I remember, around 3rd Street?
6th Street.
6th Street, okay.
Well, Nathan, this show is also not only about your business, inside look into the people behind it. And I know you have an interesting story, from your childhood. And can you share with our audience, what you have gone through in your personal life? Yeah,
of course. It's, that's really what got us to the point where we started the business. I've been a long time either employee or volunteer for the American Cancer Society. Started volunteering back when I was 7, and I was diagnosed with late stages non-Hodgkin's Burkitt's lymphoma, and spent I guess a year and a half in and out of the hospital and going through treatments and clinical trials. And it's because of those clinical trials that I'm here today. My original prognosis was 3 months, and with a little bit of grace and some clinical trials and funding from the American Cancer Society and great nurses and doctors and an amazing team, I made it through it and started volunteering with the Climb to Conquer Cancer, and even Relay for Life all the way back then when I was a kid. And when I moved here, that's what I eventually started doing for a profession, and worked for the American Cancer Society for 10 years, building communities in the fight against cancer through Relay for Life, and then transitioned to another nonprofit to help them with their fundraising campaigns and leadership before eventually going full-time at the brewery.
Were you in Montebello as a child when you were going through this?
No, I was raised in Arizona, so all the way up until I graduated high school, and moved out of here, out to California right when I graduated high school, and never looked back.
Yeah. But you had some very good doctors and medical treatment where you were.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was at St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix, so it's about a 4-hour drive from where we grew up, and the oncologist I had, Dr. Jesse Cohen, was, just a phenomenal human being, and seemed to be always looking kind of at the forefront of cancer research, and that's kind of what got us into the clinical trial program.
What was it that led you to learn of your condition?
I started having some issues just with pain in my legs and stomach, and it got really bad. My parents are retired firefighters, and we were actually at the fire department when the pain in my legs got so bad during a holiday event. I couldn't leave the restroom. I couldn't stand up, and we made several trips to the emergency room to get checked out. And at that time, you don't expect a 7-year-old boy to be really sick. So it was, I think he's faking pain for attention. So they eventually found a benign abdomen, so a rigid abdomen, and thought it was a bowel interception where the bowel kind of like goes on top of itself. So they did one surgery to remove that, and then a few months later I had a second one, and that's when they went in to fix the second one. They found tumor just filling up my entire abdomen, and because of my parents being firefighters and engaged in that community, they knew about St. Joseph's in Phoenix and recommended that we be flown out to Phoenix to see an oncologist up there.
Well, when we spoke on the phone, I had asked you, how difficult that was. And I think you said it was probably easier because you were a child and you didn't really know. And right now, I just learned that they told you, or you had 3 months. Did they tell that to you, or did they say that to your parents?
No, they told that to my parents. I didn't learn about that until I was much older. My parents kind of telling me about the backstory. But yeah, it's I completely agree. And as we were discussing on the phone, I think kids go through it so much easier. And I think a lot of that is mindset. They if you don't know your own mortality at 7 years old, you don't know how sick you really are, or what the ramifications of not getting through treatment is. So your mindset is different, and you respond differently to treatment because of that mindset, in my opinion. Another volunteer at the camp I volunteered for through the American Cancer Society for children with cancer wrote a great book called Flying with Scissors, where he kind of like walks through this, based on his experience doing this camp with the children that went through cancer, wrote this book about like these kids being kind of superheroes and not knowing their own mortality. They are able to accomplish kind of amazing things as they go through treatment and try to live their life as normal kids. They just don't know any better. At that age, you don't know that you're going through treatment. This is rare. It's just, this is something I have to deal with. I have to go through.
You started volunteering at age 7. So did you come away from this experience with a different outlook on life, or were you just appreciative that you had, the pain had gone away, but did you really know what had happened?
Yeah, I mean, all of our experiences shape our life, so I'm sure it had an impact on who we are, but I'd say no more or less than anybody else and the experience that they've all gone through. Because I mean, we've all gone through something as we've grown up, or whether it's cancer or different things that we've overcome throughout the years that kind of build us to who we are. So I definitely think that the experience that I had with cancer and the experience with the people surrounding it definitely helped me to become who I am today. And it's one of the reasons I probably, am, and I love volunteering for different things and have been a Rotarian for years. And it's probably because of the relationships and rapport that were built with the folks that, help you through those experiences, whether that's through the volunteers that just visit kids in the hospital and do arts and crafts with them, to the nurses that dedicate their lives. There's the nurses that go through the experience with kids with cancer, I think probably have one of the hardest jobs out there, because they see, the great things of people surviving, but they also see the sad things of people not surviving. And I can only imagine how difficult that has to be day in and day out for some of the nurses, 30 plus years of being in the pediatric oncology ward. So, but yes, to answer your question, I definitely think that it had an impact of who I am today and why I do the things I do, and some of the motivation behind my efforts on a daily basis.
And they told your parents 3 months, and is that a normal for that type of cancer, or with the stage that it was at?
From my understanding, for that cancer at that stage, it was relatively normal at the time. It is a relatively rare cancer, non-Hodgkin's Burkitt's lymphoma. But yeah, from my understanding, that late in the stage is what kind of led to it. And I think it got that late because of that mindset of, your son's faking pain for attention, because, you just don't expect a healthy 7-year-old child to have something that extreme. So
sure.
Was it out of your life by age 9?
For the most part, yeah. It's, I got diagnosed in 1990, and I was put into remission in 1991. So after that, I would have to go in for, I think it started out with every 6 months I'd go in for visits to get checked up, and then it switched to every year. And shortly after that, they said, well, we don't have to see you as often. And I kind of, at that point, was like, all right, I don't need to be seen very often. I'm never going again. So, but yeah, by the time I was 9, it was pretty well out of my life.
And so you went on, later high school, graduated high school, and then came to California?
Yep. Then moved to California.
Your family or just you?
Yeah, my brother was here 2 years before me. After he graduated, he moved out and was in the film industry. So I came out to actually visit him for a summer, and a summer became a summer and a winter, and summer, winter, and new summer. And
so what did you start doing in California? What was your life here?
I started out in retail when I first moved in, and started volunteering almost immediately for the American Cancer Society in Van Nuys, and at first was doing road to recovery, which is driving cancer patients to and from their treatments, because after getting chemo, you can't really drive home. And shortly after that, got recruited to be a volunteer for Relay for Life. And shortly after that, they invited me to apply for a job trying to grow the Relay for Life program throughout California. And one thing led to another. In the next 10 years of my life, we grew that program pretty substantially, and just had a blast getting people involved with the fight against cancer.
So for those 10 years, were you sort of focused on service to, the cancer community?
Yes and no. Through Relay for Life, we're really focused on building communities and recruiting
What is
people.
Relay for Life?
It's a 24-hour fundraiser to celebrate the lives of cancer patients, to remember loved ones lost, and to empower communities to fight back against cancer. So each community will get together for 24 hours, and teams will take turns walking around the track. That's kind of what made me fall in love with it, is the Luminaria ceremony at 2, 3 in the morning will to represent what a cancer patient goes through 24 hours a day. The idea is somebody from your team should be on the track for 24 hours.
So how often would that, for instance, in Montebello, let's say, how often would there be a Relay for Life event?
It's an annual event for most communities. Okay. And when we first started, there were only a handful of them in LA County. And that's one of the things we're trying to do is really build individual communities' capacity to fight cancer. So we'd go into places like Alhambra or Pasadena and would kind of talk with people about the fight against cancer and recruit volunteers, not only for the Relay for Life program, but other programs. And
well, as you said, you were driving. I mean, these are things that people could do if they're looking for, a place to give. They
absolutely.
Can be involved in helping transportation. That's year-round, around the clock, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, the American Cancer Society being such a large and a great organization, they have so many volunteer opportunities, whether it's directly being involved with cancer patients through Road to Recovery. They have loaner wig programs. They have a program called Look Good, Feel Better, where they get licensed estheticians to volunteer their time to essentially just work with a person going through chemotherapy on how they can apply makeup to lessen the appearance of going through cancer. I mean, there are just so many great opportunities and ways to become involved, in addition to the 24-hour hotline and cancer information database. It's really a wonderful organization. I still support it to this day.
So how did that develop into your business? How did you get from one place to the other?
I guess in 2012, my brother and I were kind of talking about, he had gotten into an accident, and while recovering, we were just chatting about what we want to do with our lives, and we talked about wanting to start a business together. And during that dialogue, we just talked about the things that I was passionate about at the time, philanthropy and brewing beer. So our goal was to start a company that would tie those two things together. So we started, our corporation, which eventually became Angry Horse Brewing, with the idea that at some point we'd be a benefit corporation, and written into our bylaws would be, giving back to the local community.
And that's what you are.
We're not a certified benefit corporation yet, but we do have written into our bylaws the idea of giving back, yeah. Our idea is we want to become a certified benefit corporation. Structurally, we have to change our structure slightly so that we're able to, just with laws in California. But that is what we aspire to be, as a certified benefit corporation at some point.
So the two of you are, I think you said he's the assistant brewer, or?
No, so my brother is he's on the board and helps out in the background, but he's a board member, and he has his own company as well, doing film work off to the side.
Okay.
And then my other partner, who's a brewer as well, Nate, he has his own company as well. So they're a little bit more in the peripheral right now, but they both come in and help brew on occasion, and are involved with the decision-making process and growing the business. So
the name Angry Horse came from what?
Originally, it actually came through our business partner, Nate. When he joined, he came with a name that they had come up with, and we just thought it was a cool name and would start some conversation.
Yeah, something you would remember.
Yeah, it's definitely memorable, and it's interesting to see, like, our idea as we started making it our own was to create some intrigue around it. It's one of the reasons our logo is the Burning Barn, is we want to kind of spur dialogue, and it's been fun, especially when we first opened. We've had, when I'm behind the bar serving people and then overhearing them talk with one another about the backstory of Angry Horse being, we heard one story that it was named because of a barn that burnt down on Bluff, years ago in Montebello, and the stories that we've heard around the name is really kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then even questions that we get at the bar of, is the horse angry and burnt out the barn because he's angry, or is he angry because the barn burned down?
So is your time spent mostly behind the bar?
I actually don't spend as much time behind the bar these days. I still get some time in the brew house and in the laboratory. We have our own quality control lab on site. But lately, I've been really trying to spend a lot of time just focusing on growth and where we go from here. Our goal is to open up, at least one other location in Southern California. Similar to Montebello, we want to find a community that we can become part of that community and ingrained in that community. So we're taking our time.
Now you mentioned Los Angeles. you're working on that one?
Yeah, and I say Los Angeles, but it's like the greater Los Angeles area. Yeah. So
Okay.
we're hoping to find a location in the very near future so we can open a second tap room.
Well, Nathan, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
Yeah, so I actually was thinking quite a bit about it, and I just kept coming back to this bracelet that I wear every day, and it's it might seem silly or cheesy, but it was given to me by Maylene, my partner, and it's half of a heart with a magnet in it, and she has one as well that kind of tie together. But as being a business owner and all the things we deal with, it gets challenging at times. And anytime I feel this on my wrist or notice it, it's just a reminder of why we do what we do, and kind of ties it back to family and my sons, and just reminds me of Maylene and my 2 kids. So I figured it was as good of as any to kind of talk about, because it is something I wear daily and reminds me about why I do what I do daily.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, it reflects the importance family is to you.
Yeah, family and community. It's why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to get back to the beer, because I'm curious about the beer, and I want you to talk about like your creativity and how that plays into it. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
At Warmouth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Nathan from Angry Horse Brewing. Before the break, I was wanting to go back to the beer and get you to share a little bit about that. I'm curious, how many batches did it take when you were first starting or did you drink the first batch?
I drank part of the first batch. Okay. I did not drink the whole first batch.
Okay. And then how many batches did it take for you to say, okay, I like this. This is a good product?
I mean, to where I really started feeling comfortable, it probably was 30 or 40 before I started feeling like this is something I would want to share, and I felt confident that people would enjoy it, other than just, oh yeah, of course I'll have some. It's free beer. So it took a while, and I mean, for quite a while there, we were brewing pretty frequently and getting feedback and giving away a lot of beer. And I don't drink a lot of beer, so we were giving away a lot, which is always great to get feedback. But again, if you're getting free beer, a lot of times the feedback is,
it's great.
Yeah, this is fantastic. It's free.
Actually, my grandfather was a brewer.
Really?
Yes, that was his profession. And so I'm thinking how things have changed. I'm kind of curious as to your insight, but he was a brewer for a company called Blitz Weinhardt, I think. And so, it's a big company, and he's probably one of many brewers that would brew. I don't know how the business works, but now things seem to be very localized. Just a lot of, I don't know what they're called, but just the local beers, every establishment can have its own brewer like you.
Yeah, it's getting more and more localized. We just recently got to the point where we surpassed the number of breweries that were in existence in the United States before Prohibition. Before Prohibition, it was very similar, where a lot of taverns would brew their own beer. They'd cellar it in the basement and serve it on tap upstairs. With Prohibition, that wiped out almost all those independent craft beers. And once Prohibition ended, there were only a handful of companies that survived Prohibition and really kind of had to a certain extent, had a stranglehold on the market. So it wasn't until the 80s where we started seeing craft beer have a resurgence. And then in the 90s, it really started taking off all the way up till the 2000s. But yeah, I think it was 4 years ago we surpassed the number of breweries pre-Prohibition. But if you consider how many more people there are now pre-Prohibition, the breweries per capita, I still don't think we're at what we were pre-Prohibition.
So do people go to your establishment wanting to drink yours in particular, or do you sell all other kinds of beer as well?
No, so with our current license, we sell, the only beer we are allowed to sell is beer that's made on site. So people come for the most part, to try our beer and to see what new varieties we have out. We do have a core lineup as well, so we have some diehard fans for a couple beers. It's like East LA IPA, but we have several people that come in because we release a new variety and just want to try it.
So is this a standard business model now, where you've got establishments that only are authorized to sell their product?
It definitely is a business model that's becoming somewhat popular. We also do distribution as well. So we have over 100 different accounts throughout Los Angeles County that sell or serve our beer, in addition to BevMo and Total Wine, and we're working hard this year to try to get into a couple big chains, grocery stores as well. But yeah, it is a model that some people use where they just do on-site sales. Some of them do it with what's called a brew pub license, where they do sales of alcohol made on site and food. And once you have that license, you can also do guest taps as well. So
do you have food?
We don't have our own food. We're a host facility though, so we work with different caterers, different chefs, different restaurants to essentially, quote unquote, pop up on our patio and to sell food on site as well.
So if you go into distribution, or you're doing it now, that means you're bottling as well.
We can, yeah. We can all of our beer on site. We, about a year ago, picked up our own canning line, so we actually package all of our own product on our own.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a big venture, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It was a big learning opportunity. Packaging beer and brewing beer it's essentially two completely different crafts. So we had to learn it. We had to learn it relatively quickly, and luckily we'd already been doing contract canning. We'd have a mobile canner come in, so we'd work with them, and we were learning essentially for four-ish years before we started doing it on our own. But because it is a completely new skill set, your goal is to try to have the lowest dissolved oxygen possible, and that's one of the things we focused a lot of time and attention. The moment we got our canning line is we got a dissolved oxygen meter and would constantly check our process to make sure that we had dialed in our process and getting really good dissolved oxygen numbers.
What does that do for the product?
So oxygen is the number one spoiler of beer. It makes beer go bad quickly. So the more oxygen you have in your package, the shorter the shelf life. The quicker the hops kind of dissipate in solution, and you don't get that hop flavor or aroma. And if it's really oxidized, you start getting like a cardboard taste to it.
And can you share, why did you go with a can versus like a bottle, like a dark bottle?
Yeah, so we had looked into doing bottles. Cans are just better packaging because they don't allow light in. You don't get light struck, which is another off flavor you can have. And they're just slightly easier. The whole process of having bottles, there's a little bit more controls with breakage and some different reporting requirements that go along with it. And it's easier to sell a can than it is a bottle. That's what retailers want, because it's easier to get onto a shelf and to move those than it is bottles these days.
Interesting. And are they 12 ounces?
16 ounces right at the moment.
Okay.
Our canning line can do 12, 16s, or 19.2s.
Okay.
Are there places around town here where people could find Angry Horse?
Yeah, so the easiest is Total Wine and More or BevMo, but we're also in over 100 different accounts. Boulevard Market actually has us on tap as well. We have a couple different places that are serving our beer in pint glasses in downtown LA, and the best place is to go to our website. We have a list of all of you can essentially find our beer near you.
Yeah.
That was my next question, is like, so obviously you're selling it. What kind of quantity for a place to have it on tap?
We do half barrel kegs, which is 15.5 barrels, 15.5 gallons. We do sixtels, which is about 5.16 gallons. And then we do cases. So they're 24 16-ounce cans.
And is there a distinct difference from someone drinking your beer from a can, or any beer from a can, than from a draft?
Yeah, so, I mean, really the fresher you can get it, the better. If you're getting it on draft, it usually it's more than likely only, a week, maybe 2 weeks old. If it's in a can, it could be, up to, depending on the beer and the quality control process, it could be up to 6 months. And some beers actually get better with age, but for the most part, as long as you're getting a fresh can, or if you're getting it in a keg, it should taste pretty darn similar. Our goal as brewers is try to make it so that you're getting a beer that's true to brand in a can on tap or in our tap room, no matter where you get it, it's what we intend you to drink. And one of the things that we do as part of our quality control program is every time we can, we set cases aside. We have one hot, we keep one cold, and every month we take the hot can and we cool it down and we do a side-by-side taste test comparison to make sure that that particular batch of beer is what we call true to brand out in the marketplace, so that we know that if it's on a shelf and it's this lot code, it's tasting the exact way we want it to taste.
How many people are part of that quality control? Like whose palate is that yours?
It's mine. It's our brewer. We're engaging more and more of our staff, and we're actually this year looking at expanding that to our customer base as well, as offering it as an opportunity for them to get involved in the brewery at a deeper level.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. And how many different flavors or offerings do you have right now?
Oh man, so we always have 13 on tap in the tap room at any given point. In total, we've brewed over 100 different varieties of beer that we've served throughout the years.
Wow.
We have our core 4 beers that you can pretty much always get, and then other than that, we're kind of always rotating through either us experimenting with one-off things, or we have some that come in every quarter, or once one quarter every year. And then we have beers that we do like once a year. We're about to do one called Holiday Pumpkin, which we haven't done in I think 4 years. But it's Imperial Pumpkin Barley Wine. Which is kind of an exciting beer that we do for the holidays.
Okay.
Well, this is fascinating. So in 2012, when you met with your brother and talked about what you might want to do, where was beer making, or I don't know if it's beer making or brewing, but where was that in your thoughts? Was it like first? And where did you get that interest or passion for it?
So yes and no. I would say it was high up with the idea that we wanted to make sure that we had extraordinarily high quality beer. So the brewing process was definitely front of mind. Our original idea was that we would bring on board essentially a brewmaster that would do 100% of the brewing for us. And over the years, I've grown more and more passionate about the whole process and learning constantly. I read constantly about brewing process, and I'm engaged in the forums, and we did the brewing and malting course, and so it's grown to me wanting to be more and more involved with the direct recipe formulation and brewing operations.
And do you go out and test other beers often?
Yeah, we try to. It's harder and harder, running a small business, especially post-pandemic, to get out of our doors and go to other doors, but. We do like to collaborate with other breweries and do collaboration efforts. And then we'd love to visit other breweries, and we'll typically, anytime I go to another brewery, we'll get a flight of their beers so I can try several different of their varieties without having pints.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that where you'd be served maybe 6 or 7 different types at one time, right?
Yeah, like a 4 or a 5 ounce pour, so you could get an idea for what they were trying to do.
Is that called a flight?
Yeah.
A flight.
Okay.
And then the brewing industry is just such a collaborative process. It's great that, LA brewers or brewers in California, it's essentially a sense of community. Like you can reach out and kind of pick somebody else's brain, or if you're having a challenge with, X, Y, and Z, post it onto a forum and somebody will call you immediately and be like, hey, we had that problem 3 years ago. This is what we found, led to it. It was.
And then you had this shared problem with the pandemic, and so it was probably really nice to have that community to tie into, right?
Absolutely. And I think some of the stuff that happened during the pandemic shows the power of the community, where people that had their own canning line were renting it out at very low rates to other people that weren't canning at all, that wouldn't have survived any other way. They were only doing direct consumer out of their tap room. So it gave them outlets to get their beer to their customers without having the capital expenditure of buying their own line. In addition to that, us getting together and educating some of the folks that were making decisions on our behalf about what breweries were and how they're different from bars, and how the experience is slightly different and could be considered more of a restaurant than a bar, if you will. And even partnering with some of our partners in the bar industry to educate around that and why that isn't as big of a risk as what some people felt it was.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so a brewery versus a bar, it's quite a different structure.
Oh yeah, and it's a different feel as well, and I enjoy bars as well, but going to tap room is just a different experience than going to a bar. It's, one of the reasons we sell directly to bars is people that are going to those bars want that bar experience. They want the experience that they get when they go to that environment, where going to a brewery is a little bit more, I mean, it's kind of stereotypical to say relaxed or laid back, but it's about the process, and a lot of times people want to hear about the hops and the grains that go into it. It's not going to a bar to essentially socialize in many cases. And some people do that in tap rooms as well, but I'd say tap rooms are definitely a slightly different experience than going to a bar.
Do they develop like a clique? Is there sort of type of personality that identifies with your brand?
Yeah, yes and no. It's interesting. We actually have kind of a wide swath of individuals that frequent our tap room and have become kind of raving fans. And that's one of the beauties that I see with our brand, is bringing together so many different people. And it's interesting to hear the debates and discussions and arguments that happen sometimes at the bars. People are meeting one another in different cultures, different backgrounds, different political ideas, and just hearing how people can come together over a pint and talk through it and hear each other out and chit chat and become lifelong friends has been kind of interesting. But there definitely are some folks that are a persona, if you will, that come to the tap room a little bit more than others. But one of the things I really love about our brand is the way it brings people together, and that was our goal, is building community. How do we get people to come together instead of go apart? So
yeah, that's great.
I'm just curious, are bars generally open till 2 a.m.? Is that closing hour?
I think they start like at 1:30. They'll say it's like last call, and then they'll kick you out physically at 2. That's what I remember, but I don't know. Maybe it's changed.
And is it the same with a brewery, or do you close earlier?
Some breweries have the ability to stay open till 2 in the morning. We would have the ability to submit for that. We chose not to. With the environment we're trying to create, we figured it would be better to close a little bit earlier.
Right.
And,
I can understand that. Now I can really see a difference.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, like our current license, we're allowed to stay open till midnight, but we don't every day of the week. We close early on weekdays and we stay open till midnight on weekends, because we're really trying to create an environment, create an experience for people, and we don't want it to pivot and become more of a bar atmosphere. It wouldn't be fair to our partners that buy our beer as well. So
right.
In Southern California, maybe you don't recognize how there's this drive for all things artisanal, right? Like whether it's like salad or beverage or food, and until you step out into a small town in America. And I've gone, like, let's say North Dakota, and I walk into a grocery store, and I would imagine it's all the same products that like were there in the 50s, those same companies. And there's nothing really special about it, but there's a whole group of people that's what they see and consume. But in California, you don't expect that. You want to see these small, independent or artisanal creators doing stuff. And do you see that like that here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's one of the things that we wanted to be part of. I'm a big fan of farmers markets and going and seeing local artisans and local farmers and even local chefs. It's one of the things we love to do, is partner with chefs to do food and beer pairings. That artisanal aspect of things is why I think individuals get into homebrewing, is they want to be part of that. And maybe I'm projecting because that's what I like, but
sure.
I definitely see that in California. And it's interesting, more and more as we're getting engaged in the brewing community throughout the nation, to see these different pockets around the nation. I mean, recently, being in Arizona and talking with our friends from Grand Canyon Brewing, and how their artisanal product is representative of their community, and how they have a prickly pear IPA and are just truly embedded in the community is really wild. And it's great to see that that's happening in so many different markets around the country, and people are going to these small independent craft beers because they are sourcing some of their ingredients locally, or doing things that really reflect their community, or beers that are named after or pay homage to some of the history of their communities.
Sure. Well, speaking of community, nothing really ties community like I believe food really ties community, and there's a lot of great places to eat and drink in this. And just now you had mentioned off the air Ukuk as a restaurant that you like. What do you like about that place?
Oh, I love Korean barbecue, but we kind of fell in love with that place as another place we loved kind of closed, and I've become very loyal to restaurants. So we went in, just had a great experience. Their meat was top notch, and the customer service was amazing. So Maylene and I have brought the kids out there several times just recently, and even had family in town recently for a birthday, and brought them to experience Korean barbecue for the first time there.
How do the kids like the kimchi?
My kids don't like the kimchi as much. Mason does not like, I have no idea where he got this, but he does not like spicy food. I love spicy food. But he does love the meats, loves the meats, and loves their potato salad. Really loves the potato salad there.
Right. So we've been to Ukuk together on Rosemead. I guess Korean barbecue is probably one of my favorite foods.
It is. I had it last night.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And I have to have my kimchi every day. You know,
Nice.
I'm a kimchi person.
Well, Nathan, we're going to get into some of your other favorites in the San Gabriel Valley.
So we have our SGV3, which is, our guest tells us 3 of their favorite places or events or things to do in the San Gabriel Valley. So what's on your list?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And again, I have such a hard time narrowing down some of my favorite things in San Gabriel Valley just because I've been here for so long and enjoy so much. But I'd say probably my number one is the Arroyo Seco. Back when I lived in Highland Park, that's where I ran almost every day, is up and down the Arroyo Seco around the Rose Bowl. So I have a huge affinity to the area there, and I feel like you're not even in the city when you're running through there. It's like you're in the woods. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been named several times before as a
Oh, really?
SGV3. Yeah, very special place.
I'm not very creative, evidently.
No, I mean, it's
Well,
just...
you just share it with a lot of people, including me, because, running the Rose Bowl to me has been one of the, it's something that has meaning to me, for the last 30 years I've run the Rose Bowl, and
Nice.
when I lived right next to the Rose Bowl, I could walk right there and run it. It was just something meaningful. And I know how you feel. And you can run through the woods there, the Seco. And
Yep. And it goes back for us, living in Highland Park. It cuts back down where you can run through Eagle Rock and right back to Highland Park, or you can cut off the other way and do the steps at Lacey Park, and I guess that's South Pasadena there.
Right.
So it's
San Marino. Yeah.
San Marino. Okay. Yeah, it's very versatile. It's a beautiful area. I love being down there.
Yeah, it's great. What else?
I mean, again, this has probably been on a lot of your guys' lists as well, but I'm a huge fan of the Arboretum.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The Brewers Guild has done an event there not that long ago, moved the LA Beer Week out there, and I love the different events they do out throughout the years with the Light Festival they do and the Lantern Festival, and it's just such a great place.
Well, speaking of which, I want to go. I'm always out of town during that, but have you been there, Scott? The Light Festival? It's like during the holidays,
I don't think
right?
so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. They have all these different lanterns that are built like, bears or lions and different things. You walk through it, and of course you see the peacocks and all the plants, and
Yeah.
it's at night, so it's just a beautiful experience in the evening going to the Arboretum.
Yeah, that has been named before, but again, it's just a beautiful, popular place.
Yeah.
And what's the last one that made your list?
Yeah, so again, I went for a place instead of events because there's so many events that are just phenomenal. But I think it's actually called the Emerald Necklace. But there's a series of parks and different things along the river, all the way from the dam up on the 605, and it cuts all the way down to Montebello with all these different parks and items. And I love riding my bike, and at one point was running up and down it and going through these different parks, different areas.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either.
I'm pretty sure that's what they call it, is the Emerald Necklace.
Wow.
But I think it was a partnership with several different cities and the Corps of Engineers to create kind of these small parklets as you go down the river.
So that would be close to what streets going east-west?
I mean, it cuts through a lot. I know one of the places you can get off is right there on Rush in El Monte. At one point, the brewery did this, part of our fitness club, we did a bike tour where a bunch of people met at the brewery, and we rode up the Emerald Necklace and stopped at several breweries along the way, but we went off and stopped at Progress there in El Monte. And then it runs along Peck for a while. It kind of juts in and out. It's pretty much right along the river there.
And then it goes to the dam there.
Yeah.
It's at the 605.
And I've heard that the path actually goes up above the dam all the way to a community up in the mountains there. I've never gone that far up north, but it evidently goes from way north all the way to the ocean.
Wow.
Oh yes, it does. Thomas again.
Oh,
Thomas is a listener of the show, so he loves when we mention his name, but I'm sure he knows exactly what you're talking about. And he goes up past the dam. And
Thomas,
Nice.
you can explain that. Thomas just sent me last week, incidentally, a photo of a bear on the Mount Wilson Trail.
Oh, nice.
Yes, right where, like I recognize the place because I'm there, 100 times a year. And it's a bear just walking down the trail. And
That's awesome.
yeah, I don't know. The photographer who took it was like a high school girl. She was walking the trail alone, and this bear just walked right past her.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be another, another top 3 right there is all the trails.
Yeah.
I mean, the hiking in the mountains right there are just gorgeous. It's one of my favorite things about LA in general is the hiking.
Right.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with our audience, more of who you are. And that's part of what this show is about, not only to get a look inside your industry and your business, but to give the people, the listeners, and, those who may want to know you better, a glimpse into who you are. And I think you definitely did that today. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Nathan, how can people get a hold of you? What is the address, if they want to come out and have a pint?
Yeah, so we're located at 603 West Whittier Boulevard in Montebello. We're open up almost every day of the week except for Tuesday. The best place to find out what's going on at the tap room, whether that's karaoke or live music or beer releases, is either our website or our Instagram. But yeah, we love to see all your guys' listeners and viewers and give them tours and let them know who we are.
Awesome. What's the website and the Instagram?
angryhorsebrewing.com and Angry Horse Brewing.
Perfect. All right. Nathan, thanks again for coming on the show and sharing your story with our listeners.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, there you go. There's another episode for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can find us, as always, on our website, www.sgvmasterkey.com. And shoot us an email, info@sgvmasterkey.com. And until next week, we'll see you then.
You've been listening to the SGV Master Key Podcast. Our passion is the small businesses and the people that make up the San Gabriel Valley, and it's our honor to have them on the show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure to like, rate, and review. The show is produced by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on the SGV Master Key Podcast.
Master, no, kind of master.